And now we are going to go out to Governor Newsom, who is talking about the wildfire season in California amid the pandemic. Let's listen in.
Brand new Black Hawk helicopter that was procured recently by CAL FIRE. We're very pleased to have this new equipment not only here today, but it demonstrably is part of an effort to upgrade and improve our delivery system, our capacity to mitigate, prevent, and suppress wildfires here in the state of California. I don't need to remind anybody that lives in the state of California of the wildfire season getting extended year in and year out. I don't need to remind anybody that was impacted directly or indirectly by the 628 fires that we had just last week here in the state of California about the seriousness and resolve to which we place on making sure that we are prepared for every wildfire season. As we enter into July, August, September, extending into October, and as has become the norm now, not the exception, even November, we refer to this time of season peak wildfire season. We have had to date, at least through July 5th of this year, from January to July 5th, some 4,112 wildfires. That represents a significant increase over last year. In fact, last year there were 2,580 wildfires. 4,112, 2,580, is the average that we experience on an annual basis. The good news, despite the significant increase in the total number of fires that we've experienced to date, is that the size of the fires have been contained, substantively so. In fact, average now of these wildfires about 6.6 acres. We have a goal to get to 95% suppression under 10 acres for each wildland fire. We've been exceeding that goal. And as a consequence, even though we've experienced substantially above average number of wildfires, we have actually experienced a reduction in the average number of acres burned compared to previous year and compared to historic averages. And so that's testament, it's a long way of saying this, that's testament to the talents that reside here today behind the camera, those you'll hear from in a moment, Chief Porter, and others that are responsible for keeping us safe and responsible for organizing a construct with CAL FIRE that is second to none in this country, I would argue anywhere else in the world. A force of firefighters that is about as professional as it gets, about as experienced as any force anywhere in our country, and now is better equipped than ever. More equipment represents more time saved, more value to suppression. These Black Hawk helicopters represent a $285 million procurement of some 12 helicopters that we're bringing into our fleet over the next few years. But what they also represent is the capacity to roughly double their suppression capacity, to have the capacity to move faster with more personnel, not just with more suppression capacity, and also a safety component with a second engine that allows these Black Hawks to be even more essential at a time when we've got to focus on the safety of our frontline heroes. Accordingly, we have the capacity, and once the cohort of new pilots is brought online, we'll be able to get these helicopters to provide suppression during the evening hours, which is also a significant advancement compared to the old helicopters, the Hueys from sort of Vietnam-era helicopters that we had in the past that did none of that above. So anyway, I'm just encouraged by the fact that we're seeing these procurements now come into place under now the banner of CAL FIRE. Also encouraged that we were able to successfully pass a budget this year despite a very difficult budget climate, $54.3 billion budget shortfall that we had to balance. We were still able to make investments, not just the $285 million for the Black Hawks that I referenced, but also made investments, $130 million in new investments from communication equipment, made investments on new cameras, over $5 million for 108 wildfire cameras, which are incredibly important and advantageous in terms of being able to identify early some of the sparks as it relates to new fires. We were able to get just shy of $25 million for what we refer to as an innovation sprint for new technologies. One of those that I've highlighted in the past, deserves to be highlighted again, is TechnoSilva, which does some incredible, we talk a lot about modeling as it relates to COVID-19. TechnoSilva does some incredible wildfire modeling that really helps advantage some of our planning and preparedness work throughout the state of California. Again, all of those additional investments that we were able to make despite the constraints of a very difficult budget year. One of the more important, though, investments we made was an $85.6 million investment to provide a new permanent workforce for CAL FIRE. We're adding an additional 172 members, full-time equivalent staff to our team. That is a significant increase. Those are not seasonal workers. That's baseline support for CAL FIRE. Again, during a difficult budget season, that was not necessarily something many people anticipated we would be able to accomplish, and that was accomplished because of the leadership of the legislature. I want to thank both the Senate leaders as well as Assembly leaders for supporting these budgets and advancing the collective cause of vigilance to keep us safe and prepare for our wildfire season. So with the additional permanent staff now, additional resources you see behind me in terms of equipment, more sophistication in terms of suppression and tactics based on new technologies that we procured. We believe, despite the fact we've seen an increase with a very dry winter, an increase in the total number of fires, that the team here, Chief Porter's leadership, entire Office of Emergency Services is up to the task. But I say all that very soberly on the basis of the fact that just in the last 10 years, 5 of the most destructive wildfire seasons we have incurred. I don't need to remind you of where we were just 24 months ago, talking about Paradise. And of course, last year, even though it was a below average year in terms of wildfires, it didn't feel like that for people in Southern California or in Northern California, or certainly those directly impacted by the ravages of some man-made disasters, but also Mother Nature. And I am not going to be sheepish. I won't be shy. The hots are getting hotter. The dries are getting drier. The wets are getting wetter. You may call that climate change. You may call that global warming. But one thing we know is our approach to dealing with wildfires has to change and adapt with a climate that is changing very, very dramatically. And so I just want to thank all of those leaders that are assembled here today. Again, some you'll hear from in a moment, for their attention, their stewardship, their faith and devotion to the cause of wildfire suppression and public safety. First, though, I want to just mention a couple other things before I bring up Tom Porter, our chief, and that is a little bit of update on PG&E, because PG&E plays a role in our efforts here to prepare and suppress wildfires. It goes without saying, none of us were sheepish, none of us were shy in our condemnation and critique about the nation's largest utility, PG&E, that went into bankruptcy. With everything going on, many people may not be aware that PG&E is now out of bankruptcy. We were able to accomplish that before July 1st. But they're coming out a new company. They're coming out with new expectations and ultimately new accountability and responsibility, and a new criteria that if they don't perform, the state of California can intervene in ways we've never been able to with a private utility in the past. It's important to note, part of the emergence from bankruptcy, PG&E, they're required to do things in the past they've never been required to do on vegetation management, on updating and modernizing their grid, on hardening their infrastructure, on sectionalizing parts of the grid so they could be more precise in terms of when they turn off that power and how quickly they can turn on that power, on weather monitoring stations, on their own infrared evening capacity to get lines back up and to ultimately procure the personnel that are required for the work that they need to do on wildfire safety. There's a new wildfire safety division There is a new wildfire safety advisory group made up of experts. The state of California has its own monitor that's currently in PG&E, monitoring their progress to transition. There's a $5 billion obligation that PG&E has to invest, and utilities broadly to invest in hardening their infrastructure, undergrounding wires, and that is a requirement that does not come with a profit attachment, meaning those of you watching don't have to pay the costs associated with the return on the investment of that size that they have in the past typically sought. We have much more aggressive oversight at the Public Utilities Commission, which is the authority that oversees our 3 large IOUs, our investor-owned utilities, including PG&E. And there's a framework of engagement with a new board of directors. 11 of the 14 members of the PG&E board have been replaced with a new board, a new CEO. All have started with different skill sets and different obligations. As I said a moment ago, just on the PG&E front, we also have a new capacity because of the leadership of, Jerry Hill, among many others. I want to appreciate Senator Hill in particular, though, for his leadership, getting to me just a week or so ago a bill that allows us to take PG&E over if they are not performing on the expectations and the mandates that we have set forward. We have graduated sanctions, graduated oversight, and the capacity to break glass, what we refer to as Plan B, if they simply are not doing their job. So we are about safe, reliable, and affordable service, more oversight, more accountability, more capacity to deliver. I'm not going to overpromise, however, just on the PG&E front, that everything is going to change overnight. It took us decades for PG&E to create the mess that they created, where they ended up in bankruptcy for the second time in the last decade plus. None of us, again, are naive about what they need to accomplish moving forward. But we've never had a criteria, we've never had conditions set, we've never been able to bracket our expectations and have real oversight and accountability than we do today. And so let's work through this year. Let's continue to hold that company accountable with new energy, new focus, and new leadership. Work over the next few years to continue to double down on these investments, both from the utility side as well as from CAL FIRE and our broader Office of Emergency Service, to get California the place where you deserve it to be, even as we address the issues of climate change. And so that was the framework to which I wanted to begin my presentation here today. I, of course, will be doing an update on COVID, but there is a COVID connection to the announcements we're making here today as well. And so I'm going to ask not only Tom Porter, Chief of CAL FIRE, to come up, talk a little bit about how he's preparing for the wildfire season, but also ask Director Ghilarducci at the Office of Emergency Service, because one thing we recognize is if we're going to count on our frontline employees and make these kind of investments by increasing our firefighting workforce, we got to keep them safe. We got to keep these environments COVID-free. And so we have criteria, a lot of changes here at CAL FIRE and in terms of our fire suppression strategies to make sure people have appropriate protective gear, to make sure that we're socially distancing, even as fighting fires, to make sure we're getting briefing that is not all cohorted together, to make sure that meals are served in a way where we can isolate any considerations of concern as relates to the spread of COVID-19. A lot of new protocols, new procedures are in place, both from firefighting, but also from an evacuation perspective in terms of how we shelter and how we do the processing and protocols into our shelters, working with our partners, Red Cross and others, doing temperature checks, making sure, again, that meals are individually boxed, not the kind of meals you'll typically see during evacuations and emergencies, making sure that we are cohorting people and making sure that we have physical distancing in the environments that we're putting up, even if they're temporary environments. So Director Ghilarducci will talk a little bit more about those protocols and procedures that they've been working on for months, new guidelines that they put out and actually have already utilized based on the existing wildfires that we've been experiencing since January, and talk about how we want to improve upon our efforts as we iterate in this very different environment that we are in. But with that, let me now ask Tom Porter to come up. Chief Porter, talk a little bit more about what he's been doing the last number of months to prepare for this wildfire season. And as I do that and as I walk away, I just want to acknowledge his work on those 35 high priority vegetation management projects that we identified that impact 200 vulnerable communities in the state of California. Their team delivered on all 35. They got those projects done. These are fire break projects. These are projects that had a socio-economic frame, not just a frame around acuity of concerns in terms of high-risk, vulnerable areas for fire suppression, but also on the basis of communities that don't necessarily have the resources that many others have, making sure that in trailer parks, around trailer parks, or where people don't have access to vehicles where they can move quickly or don't have other resources, that we also prioritize those individuals as part of this 35 cohort. And I just want to thank Tom for identifying that a year ago, moving on that, and finally delivering on that last project, which was up there near Highway 17 around Santa Cruz. Finally, that project, which was a stubborn one, finally got done. Thank you, Tom Porter. Happy to take a question.
Well, thank you, Governor, and thank you for all the recognition. And it goes without saying that the troops on the ground are the ones that really make this all happen. That is a mix of CAL FIRE, Forest Service, BLM, other DOI, Department of Interior agencies, as well as our local government partners that are there every single day putting these fires out and keeping them small, as Governor mentioned. So I wanted to start out with kind of what we're looking at. We are now at the point of turning the corner. We are in peak fire season. That means that fires aren't going to just go out as the sun goes down. They're going to start burning through the night. They're going to start burning into the chaparral or brush-covered landscape. They're going to start burning into the forest. This is the time of year where fires start to get bigger and more difficult to control. So, the resources the Governor mentioned, the CAL FIRE Hawk behind me. We have 3 that are ready for water dropping today and getting their crews filled out and deployed to the field. We have the rest that are coming online in the next months and a couple of years. What that means is we'll be able to meet that 95% of the time keeping fires 10 acres or less. And we will work with all of our partners to ensure that that is what we continue to do. What we need from you, the public, is a continued vigilance. We have finished the 35 projects. We are continuing with an additional list of projects that follow that. And we are not going to forget that we need to come back and maintain the 35 projects. So this is an ongoing commitment to you, the public, that we will maintain and look to further that effort that was undertaken in the last year. But we need you also to be vigilant, identify fires early, call them in. The cameras work great, but sometimes the phone is faster. So call in fires. Note suspicious activity. Just in this calendar year, just 2020, we have already arrested, and this is only CAL FIRE law enforcement, has already arrested 45 arsonists. 45, just in the 7-month period that we're currently in for this year. That is because of tips that come from you, the public. We need to have that information. And then, as we start to respond to fires, and there are evacuations, there's already been evacuations here and there on some of the smaller fires that we've had thus far. Public is starting to see how those are going to go. Director Ghilarducci will give more detail about that. We need you as the public to wear your mask. Your mask is what's going to keep you safe from infections coming into your community, as well as keep our firefighters and emergency responders safe from taking infection out into their population. We really need you to wear the masks, and we're all wearing masks here today. That is my expectation, that my firefighters are doing the same, and that you, the public, are helping us with that messaging. So we will continue to commit to aggressive initial attack. That is the point in time when we can reduce the impact to wildland fire to the greatest extent. If we can keep fires small, we will do everything in our power to do so. That will reduce the impact on the population, on health, and everything that goes along with it. It'll save budget as well. So what you'll hear is me calling for now painting small fires. We need to put as much retardant on the ground around wildfires as possible, as quickly as possible, in order to keep fires small. Retardant keeps fires small by allowing the time to get fire crews in and cut line around. That is absolutely important. It needs to happen on every single fire, regardless of jurisdiction. We will make it happen. We have the air fleet to do so. With that, I'm going to circle back. Our mutual aid partnership here in California is something that the world aspires to. There isn't any place on earth that has the capabilities that are brought together by our community of local government, federal government, and state government working together seamlessly to keep fires small, but when fires get big, to wrap around and make sure that the fire is taken care of as well as the public. With that, I'm going to turn the mic to Director Ghilarducci. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So just kind of building on Chief Porter's comment, talking about the mutual aid system and our ability to respond to wildfires. In this particular year, with COVID, a little bit more complexity, the need to make sure that all of our mutual aid responders, all of our firefighters, and the public are aware of what to do when we may have an evacuation and how we're going to do things differently in the event we need to set up an emergency shelter. But that mutual aid system expands to beyond just the firefighters. It includes our law enforcement and sheriffs and highway patrol. It includes our emergency services at the local level, the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army. These are all entities that come together to help us through the process of making sure that all of you are kept as safe as possible during these events. This year, when we have a wildfire, you want to be very, very attuned of what's happening in your community. Pay attention to local authorities. Listen to alerts and warnings. If you're told to evacuate, evacuate. Do not wait. This is very important. There may be conditions because of resource limitations, or we may be wanting this year to move people out of harm's way before fire gets to a particular area. And so we will be informing you of what those fire conditions are in your area. So when you see a red flag warning, when you listen to local authorities about what's happening in your community. If you're told to evacuate this year, we are doing some things a little differently. It may be that we don't put you in a congregate shelter situation. We may be putting you into hotels. We've been working throughout the state with the hotel industry.
You've been listening to state fire officials and the governor talk about the state's preparedness efforts for the wildfire season, which we are well into right now. They are actually standing in front of a new Black Hawk helicopter, 3 of them available right now for CAL FIRE to use. They're faster and they hold 3 times more water than the old helicopters. More will be added to the fleet as well as more personnel. personnel to help with the wildfire season, 172 to be exact. Staff members were added to the staff. They were calling for the public's vigilance as well, to call in fires, to note suspicious fires, saying that 45 arsonists have already been arrested in just the last 7 months, and to wear your mask to not only keep you safe during the pandemic, but also the firefighters and first responders. You can keep